Fury mounts in the Trayvon Martin case. We are now seeing a concerted pushback on the part of the man who shot and killed this unarmed 17-year-old. That neighborhood watch captain, George Zimmerman. In a moment, we're going to speak live with Zimmerman's legal advisor and his personal friend. But first, here's ABC's Matt Gutman with exclusive new details.
This morning, we are learning more about Trayvon Martin's killer, George Zimmerman, as friends are coming forward with a portrait of a man who is deep in hiding, facing death threats, and even remorseful. His attorney, Craig Sonner, tells us he fears for his life and for his family's safety.
I understand he's in hiding, but do police know where he is? Do you know where he is?
In other interviews, I wasn't exactly sure. I do know where he is today.
As more protests sprouted up across the country, spontaneously rallying for justice, calling for his arrest, and the Black Panthers offering a $10,000 bounty for his capture. But Sonner contends his client acted only out of self-defense and is not a racist. A sentiment echoed by his friend and former Crime Watch block captain, Frank Taffy.
George just didn't jump out of a car and start running after Trayvon, pull out a gun to shoot him just for his Skittles and his iced tea. So I just want to go on the record. There's more to it.
Do you think Trayvon provoked him?
Personally, yes.
But Taffy wondered if it was all the crime in the neighborhood that pushed Zimmerman to the edge.
This is one of the homes that was burglarized during the day.
And he received this voicemail from Zimmerman on Friday, thanking him for his support.
I appreciate it, and you're truly setting an example for me for the future of just doing the right thing, even when it's tough, and I appreciate it. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks.
It's a voice that another friend remembers clearly. A voice this friend recognizes immediately as Zimmerman's, not Martin's, and the howls caught in this 911 call.
Maybe both. I'm not sure. There's just someone screaming outside.
For Good Morning America, Matt Gutman, ABC News, Sanford, Florida.
Matt, thank you. And with us now, Joe Oliver, who's a friend of George Zimmerman. Also here, Zimmerman's legal advisor, Craig Sonner. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
Thanks for coming in. Joe, let me start with you. You've spoken to George. How's he doing?
Better. After this first started, the reports that I got were that he couldn't stop crying.
Is he aware of the national outrage, all the rallies, the president getting involved?
Just now he's becoming aware of how big this has gotten, and that's why he contacted Craig. I spoke to him for the first time yesterday, briefly, and you know, it's just starting to sink in. Up until this point, because of he was there and he knows what happened, and because he's not in jail, he's been very confident, naively, that this would all blow over. But because only half of the story has gone out, because the evidence won't be heard until the grand jury convenes, you know, he's got to go into hiding. But now he realizes just how big this is.
So you say he's in hiding. Is he scared for his life?
Wouldn't you be? I mean, with all of this? I mean, there's someone, crazy man, who put a $10,000 bounty out on his head. Now, I'd like to know what makes that person any better than the person they think George is.
You have known him for quite a while.
I've known George since he started dating his wife.
So about a decade. And in your view, is he a racist?
I have never seen anything to indicate that.
Now, on the tapes, on the 911 tapes, there's a moment where many people swear they hear him uttering a racial epithet. Does that make any sense to you? Does that compute to you at all?
No, not at all. And in fact, I spoke with my teenage daughter yesterday, and the word in question, I mean, it's the difference between a C and a G, from what I understand. And goon is apparently a term of endearment in the high schools these days. I don't know of anyone younger than 40 who uses coon as a racial epithet anymore.
You said just a moment ago that we've only heard half the story. Let me play you a key moment from the 911 tapes on which we hear some screaming. Take a listen.
Maybe both. I'm not sure. There's just someone screaming outside.
Okay, what's the address that they're near?
Now, several eyewitnesses have said that the screams were those of a child. What do you hear?
Well, from that clip, I couldn't quite hear it, but from the clips that I've heard online, I hear George. I've heard George's voice pretty much every day for the past couple of years. And I mean, that sounded like someone who was in dire need of help. and it sounded like George.
Craig, let me ask you a question. You have said this was a case of self-defense.
Yes.
Now, for a lot of people, that strains credulity. A lot of people have said, look, you hear on the 911 tapes the operator saying to George, do not pursue, and yet he does anyway. And we know that we have a 17-year-old kid here who is carrying candy and iced tea, is on the phone with his girlfriend, not an optimal position from which to threaten the life of a grown man who's carrying a gun. How is that self-defense?
Well, I don't think we've heard all the evidence. I don't want to litigate this case in the media, but there's more to be told to that story. That's only a part of it, and there's more evidence that's going to be released, you know, when the case goes forward. It'll go to the grand jury, I believe, on April 10th. At that point, more evidence is going to come out. That's only a small snippet of anything that happened that evening. And I think when the other 911 tapes are released and when the other evidence comes out, it'll show clearly that George Zimmerman was acting in self-defense.
But let me press you on this. I know you say you don't want to litigate this publicly, but we are talking about a teenager against a grown man who has a gun. I mean, it's just hard to imagine for many of us how, given that power imbalance, the guy with the gun could be in a position of having to defend himself.
Can I jump in real quick on that? We're talking about a teenager, and after speaking with George, that George was looking up to at the time of the confrontation. The teenager is taller than George. What's more, George is 40 pounds lighter than the pictures everybody has seen.
But George was told not to pursue. We hear that. This is not a fact that is in question.
You hear you don't have to do that. That's what the operator said. You don't have to do that. Now the question is, how far did he pursue? Who made the initial contact? What started the confrontation in the first place? The fact that the investigation so far has come out the way it is, because of Sanford's history, I find it hard to believe that the police department wouldn't have George in jail now if they had only one shreddable piece to support that fact. George is not in jail because they have come out and said they don't have the evidence to arrest him. Because of Sanford's history and because of how Florida law enforcement works, if they have evidence to arrest you, they arrest you.
Do you expect charges at some point, Craig?
Well, it's going to the grand jury on April 10th, and then the grand jury will make the decision at that time. So, I mean, they can file charges at any time. They could do it, you know, tomorrow's Monday. They could file them tomorrow. Whether they will or not, I mean, thus far they have not, and it's my contention that when all the evidence I believe is going to come forward, I think it's clearly going to be a case of self-defense.
Much more to come on this case. Craig Sonner, Joe Oliver, thank you both. Really appreciate your time on this Sunday morning.
Thank you.